Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to our Friday night program. I, as you know, was off last week visiting my family, meeting my new granddaughter, spending time with my grandson and my children, and it was definitely well past needed. So I thank you for your indulgence in the week off, and I look forward to many weeks ahead, hopefully soon in person. We'll let you know more about that as we know more. As you probably remember, May 15th is our incredible virtual trivia night. It is going to be professionally run, and for every non-member who attends, the temple will receive $100. So come and have fun. It's a free event. But you know what? Maybe I'm not the best person to tell you about it. Let's listen to two of our congregation's leaders, Denise Parker and Ned Greenberg, as they discuss this upcoming event.
Hey, Denise.
Hi, Ned.
I have a question. Didn't you tell me that you love playing trivia games?
I sure do.
Well, have you heard about the Birmingham Temple Trivia Night?
I haven't. What is it?
Well, it's Saturday, May 15th. The temple is hosting a huge trivia game online on Zoom, and everybody is invited.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be professionally hosted by an LA comic or some other talented individual. So it's sure to be funny and fun. And there are going to be prizes for the winning teams.
Oh, that sounds great. How much does it cost?
Well, that's the best part. It doesn't cost anything at all. It is the temple fundraiser, but we've had some very generous donors and sponsors, and so all the costs are covered. So now this event is really just to get everybody together and to join in some fun. And as a special mention, one donor, because they want to have us introduced to new people, has said for each non-member guest that someone brings to trivia night, they'll donate an extra $100 up to $5,000.
That is amazing. I have some friends who would love to play trivia. But how exactly do we join up?
Well, it's really easy because it's on Zoom. You can have team members who aren't in the same place. They Zoom in from anywhere. So you could pick your own group of people to create a team, or you could say, I want to meet some new people, and we'll place you on a team. Let me show you, because it's on the temple website. I'm going to share my screen right now. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Oh, good. Well, this is on birminghamtemple.com. You just go there, and up at the top it says, click here to register. You click there, and you should see the registration page. There it is. And it's very easy, quick and easy. You can register for yourself and your team if you want.
That is great. I mean, I know I can handle that. I do have some friends that aren't so tech savvy.
Yeah, well, you don't have to worry about that. You can actually register for them. And as long as they can click on a link and go on Zoom, and by this time everybody can go on Zoom, they can join in the fun.
That is great. I am going to go online and register right now. When did you say it is again?
Well, it's going to be Saturday, May 15th at 7 p.m. And it sounds like I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
And I am looking forward to seeing you and everybody who's watching. So go to birminghamtemple.com and register.
Thank you, Ned and Denise, for that great presentation. Before we continue, I want to wish Mazel Tov to one of our longtime members, Rudy Simons. Rudy Simons is being honored for his work as a peace and human rights activist at the upcoming Myra Wolfgang Awards of the Detroit Jews for Justice, a fine organization that we are proud to support at our congregation. The award ceremony is next week, Tuesday, May 4th, online at 7:30. You can get your own tickets to this virtual event at DetroitJewsForJustice.org. Look for the Myra Wolfgang Awards tab. And finally, on Saturday afternoon, May 22nd, we are returning to in-person programming, outdoors and socially distanced, for a special spring celebration where we will make signs about our favorite causes, including the names of Black victims of police violence, whose names will be on our hill to complement our Black Lives Matter banner. We'll have snacks, everything wrapped up and safe. We'll have a 1 to 1:30 p.m., an optional outdoor yoga session with Connie Grossman, our BT amazing member and yoga instructor. So look for more information in the newsletter. Join us in person with your masks on Saturday, May 22nd at 1:30 p.m. Now we turn to our candle lighting as we welcome Shabbat.
Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor b'shalom, b'shalom, Baruch haor, Baruch haor, b'Shabbat.
The poet Ellen Dan wrote, "May we see the world each day with fresh eyes. May we always know day from night, true from false, wisdom from convenience. May our every step be on firm earth. May we see through illusion to reality. May we bring splendor and joy to all we touch. May we always know what it is to live in freedom. May we be a support to those who have fallen. May we guide those who wander to return to their true path. May our needs be fulfilled. May we draw strength from our community. May we contribute to the splendor that is humankind. May we remember the joy of freedom, even in times of bondage. On life's path, may we never know weariness of body, mind, or spirit." We continue now with Afo Ori. May we strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. These are the ideas that we inscribe on our innermost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words, and especially through our deeds, so that the next generations learn to revere and celebrate life.
אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה אז יבואו כבר כולם. אמרו את זה קודם, לפניי זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה ננסה מהחלה. יהיה לנו רע, אין דבר, זה לא נורא. אמרו את זה קודם, לפניי זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם.
Our guest tonight is Louisa Griva, Director of Global Advocacy for the Uyghur Human Rights Project. She joined me from her offices in Washington for a conversation that we recorded 2 weeks ago. Ms. Grieva is an acknowledged expert on human rights in China, having traveled and worked there since 1980. She first visited the region about which we're discussing tonight in 1988. Ms. Grieva has served on the Amnesty International USA Board of Directors, the Virginia Advisory Committee of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and a number of other related organizations and civil commissions. She is the author of several book chapters on ethnic issues and human rights in China, and has testified before Congress on democracy in Asia.
Luisa Grieva, thank you so very much for joining us to talk about this very important issue about which many of us, even those of us who are involved in social justice concerns, are not as informed perhaps as we should be. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the Xinjiang, I'm sorry, I'm trying to say this properly, Xinjiang region of China and how we got there?
Yes, thank you so much for asking, Rabbi Jeff. It's just tremendous to have people all over the world be concerned about what's happening to the Uyghur people. The religious freedom, cultural identity of the Uyghurs has been under assault for many decades. But since 2017, a new party secretary came to the Xinjiang region and began a policy of total suppression. So the byword was round up those who should be rounded up, to supposedly do re-education of the Uyghur people. The accusation was they're infected by extremist thoughts and they are potentially implicated in terrorism. And so who got rounded up? Teachers, religious teachers, and their entire families, right? An 82-year-old imam, religious teacher, his entire family down to the grandchildren. And enormous camps were built up. And so that's why with a policy of indiscriminate collective punishment and guilt by association to round up, the UN said, probably 1 million, and likely the number is much, much higher. We have a pretty firm estimate of 1.8 million people out of a population of something around 12 million are rounded up in this way just in the last 4 years.
Where is the region located, and what is the ethnic makeup and religious makeup of that area?
That's right. Who are the Uyghurs? So if you picture a map where, if you know where Tibet is, so if you picture there's India, and then there's Central Asia, and then there's China. Tibet is in the Himalayan region. And if you look north of that, that's the Uyghur region, can be called East Turkestan. It's a Turkic land. The Uyghurs are Turkic, along with some people who are Kazakh and Uzbek. So if you think of the Central Asian countries, and then north of that is Mongolia, and east of that is China. So people say it's the northwest of China. But for Uyghurs, it's not the northwest of China. It's their homeland where they have lived. They built mosques 800 years ago, very early followers of Islam. And of course, a very complicated history of conquests and wars, as well as population, cultural centers in the southern part, and in the northern part were more Buddhist, and the southern part were more dominated by Uyghurs who embraced Islam very early on. So it's a culturally diverse area, but for the most part, the largest population is the Uyghur people, who have their own language and their own history, their own scholarship, poetry, art, literature, and so on.
You mentioned that in 2017 came the big crackdown. What was the place of the Uyghurs in the Chinese state before that?
It's a great question. So where the Uyghurs live actually technically is not a province. Of course, on a map, there are dividing lines. There's, let me think of an example. So Guangdong province, right, where a lot of the factories are. There's Tibet, and there's the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is the official name of the homeland of the Uyghurs. And so what is an autonomous region? It has a special status under the Constitution, going back to 1949, Mao Zedong's People's Liberation Army is winning the Civil War and has to figure out what to do with various peoples who live on the periphery of the old Chinese dynasty, right? The emperor who, the emperor, last emperor was stepped down in 1911 with the 1911 revolution. So you had a period in the early 20th century where there was a republic, but it was a civil war. 1949 is the triumph of the communists. And the idea was we will build a new socialist nation, and it will include various ethnic nationalities. And of course, the Uyghurs are one of them. And they had such a large homeland. So that's why it got a special name and a special status, promising certain forms of autonomy. It's all a false promise, of course.
Now, under the current conditions, the world has sort of begun to take notice of this. What caused the change? Because in 2017, 2018, we were not hearing a lot. Has it significantly worsened? Is it just that more news is getting out?
There's a huge veil of secrecy over what's happening. So this tells us what? That the Chinese government knows what it's doing, that what it is doing will arouse enormous condemnation and enormous condemnation from the rest of the world. Even Chinese people, of course, might wonder, how can you just lock people up? So this is one reason for the relentless media messaging rhetoric, and one might say propaganda coming out of the Chinese government to paint all Uyghurs as dangerous to China and to Chinese people, and fomenters of violence, and being religious extremists. The reason for the escalation was what the Chinese state, there are papers showing that the Chinese state and academic analysts in China were saying that China's, quote, minority policy was failing. So Tibetans and Uyghurs, for example, still felt that they were Tibetans, still felt that they were Uyghurs, still, many of them still had religious faith, despite Chinese state policies to say they should not feel that they have their own identity. They should feel Chinese, and they don't. And so all the economic incentives, if only their lives were better and that we had, state-imposed economic development, wouldn't that make people, be happy to be Chinese and loyal to the Chinese Communist Party? And they evaluated that this wasn't happening. And so in the case of the Uyghur region, the leadership said, let's have a strike first policy. And with that come this litany of atrocity crimes committed against the Uyghur people. But we didn't know about it because, in a sense, it was kept secret for that time. Gradually, there were tremendous media exposés from the New York Times to CNN to BBC, but those journalists were actually stopped. They were many times followed, the film taken out of their cameras. And so, in fact, there's less reporting on the ground, but there's more reporting through satellite imagery to show enormous prison camps where you can see the guard towers, you can see the shadow of the structure for the barbed wire, you can see absolutely rapid tripling, quadrupling, enormous expansion of secure facilities with distinctive roofs of factories. So we know that this is where there's production happening. So the people taken away from their homes are being put to work on consumer products that get exported to the world. All of that can be seen from satellite imagery. And there's just extensive documentation of that, and as well as the testimony, of course, of Uyghurs abroad. So many of my friends who are Uyghur in the US and Belgium, Germany, Australia, Canada, all over the world are saying, I can't reach my family members. I haven't, but they called me in 2017 and said, don't call me again. And then deleted them from their chats. So we know that it's like your entire family, your entire people, your classmates, your teachers, your business partners, all your relatives dropping off the face of the earth into a black hole. And so lack of knowledge, is not a headline. And so it took a long time for the world to awake to what was happening.
Now, I know that the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, I heard a very large number of United Nations affiliated and recognized human rights organizations have been calling attention to this. What are they doing? What can they do?
Yes, here we are in 2021. So the UN is unfortunately not able to fulfill its mandate, right? Established after World War in response to the depredations of Nazi Germany and causing the Second World War and causing the atrocity crimes that were the whole purpose of the 1948 Genocide Convention, the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. So this is really a core purpose of the UN, and it is a timid institution. And in fact, the Chinese government has invested enormous diplomatic resources into dominating many of the agencies, and as well as the Human Rights Council, and of course sits on the Security Council. So there's been no General Assembly resolution. There's been the only things that are happening at the Human Rights Council are joint letters. So the good thing is that 39 countries, led by Germany, did write a letter to the president of the Human Rights Council last summer to express, quote, serious concern about violations of human rights conventions, but it's relatively weak. So the action is really much more in individual governments, and in fact, even the private sector, which I can explain if you're interested. But governments, there are 3 governments that have made a determination that the atrocity crimes experienced by the Uyghurs and Kazakhs are crimes against humanity and genocide.
Which countries are those?
So the US made this determination in January. So under the Trump administration, official announcement, and then reaffirmed by our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, on March 22nd, and again with the release of an annual human rights report, reaffirming that this is an ongoing crime. Then the Dutch Parliament and the Canadian Parliament have both made this determination, and it's under debate in the Belgian Parliament and the Australian Parliament, apparently raised also in and of course, huge debate in the UK. The Prime Minister is weighing in.
Before we turned on the cameras, as it were, I asked you about what might be called, I suppose, Xinjiang denialism. And it's been brought to my attention. One fellow named Max Blumenthal, I don't know if it's a name you're familiar with, other kinds of things that are online, excuse me, where they're essentially saying, no, this isn't happening. This is all propaganda.
It is in the interest, of course, of the Chinese government to promote an alternative line. And then but if you're not in the Chinese government, why would you be aggressively ignoring well-documented evidence, some of which I've mentioned already, to deny what's happening? And there's some, what you might call sincere ideological allegiances, so that people who really feel that whatever the US does in the international sphere is a cause of tremendous human rights problems. US imperialism is the major problem facing the world. For them, they would like to show up and say, well, if the US is speaking up, well, therefore, automatically it must be made up, it must be a lie, and then defending the Chinese government. Other people, a few people have business interests in China. So there are some Canadians and a few other foreigners who, do not look Asian and are not Chinese themselves, who are out there producing video content supporting the Chinese government line that Uyghurs are perfectly happy, and the entire story of the Uyghur crimes against humanity is some kind of plot to keep China down. And so there are people supporting that either through their self-interest or through their ideological commitments.
And Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, just to name 2, are not known to be particularly supportive of the United States' own forays into imperialism, or whatever you want to call it. So the fact that they're documenting this as well, I think, should be convincing to people. Everything I've read, and I've read now a number of accounts, including a very lengthy one I would commend to people from, I believe it was this week's New Yorker, one long story about one family's frustrations. Just in the 1 or 2 minutes we have left, is there something we all can do to help bring more attention to this matter?
I would absolutely invite anyone to go to the UHRP website, uhrp.org, and we have a Take Action button, and it's called 8 Things You Can Do to Help Uyghurs in a Time of Genocide. There's fundraising for a Uyghur wellness initiative that I'd love to share with you if your listeners are interested, because of the psychological impact of our own neighbors here in the US and Canada who are suffering unresolved grief, and they're secondary survivors of genocide, to have resources to help them survive even as secondary survivors, regardless of how long it takes for us to close the concentration camps. I'll mention one other thing, which is congressional action. So for American citizens, please call your senators and ask them to co-sponsor a bill currently pending called the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. And right now it only has 40 sponsors, co-sponsors. It should have 60 or 80 or 100. And we would love to have everyone just make that call, leave a voicemail. This is my hometown. Please co-sponsor S65.
I should mention that locally, and that's how you and I met, the Jewish Community Relations Council here in Detroit is also working on an initiative with the organization. Thank you so very much for taking this time to explain to us better about what's going on. And we send our best to you and for your efforts. And just hopefully the situation we'll find one way or another to make this stop as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
A Reading for Peace by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. We continue with Na'aseh Shalom. Let us make peace. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, we extend our well wishes to these members of our community and to their loved ones, to Rob Lasker, Joe Gaden, Julie Eliason, Karen Tremper-Harris, Myron Tink, and Rabbi Peter Schweitzer. May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, the renewal of their bodies, and the renewal of their spirits.
Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing.
Before we continue with our own remembrances, I would like to send condolences to the people of the State of Israel, particularly to the families of those who died at last night's horrible accident during the Lag BaOmer celebrations in Mount Meron. Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, and the martyrs of all people whose graves are unmarked, those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we meditate upon them, as we remember them, we think about the meanings of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. We extend our deepest condolences once again to the family of Marilyn Rowans and to all those at our congregation who loved her, who died within the past 30 days. As we also observe tonight's yahrzeits, William Eisen, Max Ellenbogen, Lila Breyer Liederman, Celia Meisner, Jack Miller, Bruce Mumbrew, Paul Rose, Ralph Sarkis, Michael Scala, Esther Schonlunker, and Richard Slade. Yehi Zichram Livracha. May the memories of these beloved people provide some measure of comfort to those who face life now in their absence. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Shabbat Shalom. We'll conclude now with this beautiful song.